Starfield.
With just about 2 weeks to go until Starfield, Bethesda held a Q&A on their official Discord. There are 16 questions and some pretty lengthy answers on some of these, so some nice stuff to dig through. However, I do want to warn you guys, I don't think there's anything like major groundbreaking like to report from this Q&A. I just think it's fun. It sort of fills in some gaps in what people were wondering about. Question 1 is, can we buy houses or property in main cities? And Will, one of the devs on the team, answered. He said, yep, there's housing in different cities that the player can get. Some you have to purchase and some are rewards for specific quests. Emil, another dev on the team, said, sure can. You can purchase a dwelling in all the major cities in the game, and there's at least one that you get specifically for completing something. Bethesda games have had this ability pretty much since I can remember. You could always buy a house, so this is something that I kind of assumed was going to be in the game. It's interesting they both point out that you get some houses as rewards for specific quests, but again, that's been around forever. It brings me back to Fallout 3. If you disarm the bomb in Megaton, you would get your very own house. So this is not anything new, just kind of nice to know. Question 2, if we get the kid stuff trait, will our parents be generated based on our character's look, or are there standard parents put in place, and what benefits might there be? Will says our programmers on our new face tech were excited to make a function that could try to match your custom face and then create the two parents. So they are based on what your character looks like, although the specific math involved is a bit beyond me. We had similar tech in our previous games. Emil says, yes, totally. Just as we did in Fallout 3 with your dad and in Fallout 4 with your son, in Starfield, if you take the kid stuff trait, your parents are based off of you. No spoilers, but I think fans will really appreciate the actors we got to play those roles, and they just get so into it, it's awesome. Oh, and yeah, you can get stuff. If you remember, kid stuff is a trait you pick when you're creating your character, and it's your parents are alive and well, and you can visit them at their home, but you will automatically send 2% of your credits home to them every week. I'm definitely curious about the benefits. They didn't really answer that. They just said you get stuff. Who knows what Emil is talking about there. Question 3, for those of us who have never played a BGS game and will be starting with Starfield, what information should we know that will make the experience more impactful right from the start? And also, how deep should we go into creating our character's backstory before we start the game? Emil says we always make our games for fans both old and new, so you can jump in without ever having played a Bethesda title before. Will says while we do start you off in the same spot, what happened to you before the game starts is totally up to you and your headcanon. Emil says, but we like to look at it less as playing a game and more about living in the universe we created. So settle in, go at your own pace, and pretty soon you'll learn all the systems and be adventuring through the settled systems the way you choose. Will says there's a trait and background system that will let you specify more about yourself, but you can also select an anonymous background and no traits if you want. In terms of if you've never played a BGS game before, try anything. We're a simulation as well as a role-playing game, so we try to support the player doing what they want as much as we can. Emil says, as for going into a character's backstory, that's entirely up to you. I'm all about that headcanon. For example, my latest character is a working schlub named Mitch Dombrowski. He's a husky, good-natured space trucker, and while he'll do whatever he needs to defend himself, he'll never shoot first. He's like Han Solo's sweeter older brother. And yes, there are traits and backgrounds that support that kind of thing. So far, we've seen 16 different backgrounds and 17 different traits. So from what we know, Long Hauler is one of the backgrounds, and that makes perfect sense for a space trucker to have that background. There's not much else to add here. It just sounds like they're describing a Bethesda game. You get to bring whatever you want to bring into it, and you go from there. Question 4, how will the smuggling cargo system work? Can we hide it somewhere on the ship and sell it for more currency later? Will says certain items are considered contraband, and you'll need to smuggle them past security ships that are in orbit of major settlements. Emil says there are specific items that are considered contraband, meaning they're pretty much illegal everywhere. And yes, you can hide them using special ship modules you can purchase. So, you know, you don't get caught with those harvested organs. The economy is fixed, but prices of bought and sold goods can change based on the skills you choose. The contraband question was something I was wondering about, and this sort of makes sense to me. You know, you kind of have to save up for that special ship thing that'll allow you to sneak it past the security. It's fun to know that that's just not like a flavor text thing though. Like you actually, this is a gameplay mechanic. If you want to run contraband, you have to invest in it in order to be able to do it. Now, the final thing about the economy being fixed is interesting because this is exactly how Bethesda games have always been. I think some people were sort of wish casting that things would be different, that they would go a little more in depth here. Personally, this doesn't bother me. I don't need to like affect the market. I feel like Starfield is doing plenty of other different things for me to get invested in. Question 5, will there be a jail system if we committed crimes? Will says yes, you can elect to go to jail or pay a fine when you're arrested or even resist arrest and try to escape. Emil says, yep, the settle system is more like Skyrim than Fallout 4's Commonwealth in that regard. You bunch of criminals. There's civilization, there's government, and there are laws, and in a couple of cases, we actually explore the themes of crime and punishment in our futuristic universe. This is something, if you played a BGS game, you obviously expected. It's been in every single one of them. I did always prefer the way Skyrim felt, being in a society, whereas Fallout is just lawless anarchy. I feel like it provides for more interesting outcomes, so I'm curious to know what Emil is referring to about, futuristic crime and punishment. Question 6, will time pass when not in the game? For example, will my trade routes, outposts, and mining operations continue to produce, or does that only occur while actively playing? Emil says the sim only runs when you're actively playing, no sleeping on the job. And then Will says only when actively playing. Pretty simple here. I like this. I don't like when there's real world timers. A game that did that recently was Mass Effect Andromeda. God, that was 6 years ago. But there were like some Apex missions where you would run it and it sort of was connected online. And that kind of always brought me out of the immersive part of the game. And I feel like that doesn't make any sense for a Bethesda game. So I'm glad they're not doing it, but I didn't really expect it anyway. Question 7, can you be a double agent in the game? For example, if you join the United Colonies, can you also join the Crimson Fleet and give the United Colonies information? And what factions have that feature if they do? Will says all of the playable factions can be completed independently. Emil says, ha, that is exactly what you can do. Infiltrate the Crimson Fleet for UC Sysdef. It's specific to that quest line. Will says the Crimson Fleet storyline does feature you being an undercover agent inside the fleet on behalf of UC Sysdef, a specific military branch of the United Colonies, but whether you betray the fleet or UC Sysdef is a choice you will get to make. Emil says, in the studio, I have been half-jokingly accused of referencing movies that some folks have never seen because I'm old. So with this particular plotline, the inspiration was very much the movie Donnie Brasco, which is the true story of an FBI agent who infiltrates the Mafia. How far will you go? So there's a lot of cool stuff here. First off, what Will said, all of the factions, you can do all of their quest lines and missions independently, which is great in my opinion. It's just like Skyrim. So in Skyrim, you could become, you could finish the Dark Brotherhood. You could finish the Mages Guild at the College of Winterhold. You could do all these very different separate things that felt like their own little story arcs. To me, it sounds like sort of Constellation searching for the artifact. That's probably the main story. And then the sort of side story is the political conflict going on, which again, sounds very much like Skyrim to me. Bethesda games, for the most part, have had these situations where you get to pretend to be someone else and sort of infiltrate behind enemy lines, and it's nice to see that that's coming back. Those are some of my, most memorable quests that I can remember. Question 8, depending on traits selected during character creation, will it at all be possible to play through the game in a pacifist mode? For example, without killing anyone or even potentially anything. Will says, I can't guarantee every mission can be completed in pacifist mode, but we do have a couple of systems that will help. Emil says, so we talked about this very early on in pre-production, whether or not we would fully support a non-lethal playthrough. We realized that for various reasons, that wasn't totally feasible. Will goes on, one system is our speech challenge game where you can persuade someone to do something like not fight you. Emil says, now that being said, there are some good non-lethal options, whether through dialogue or by using a non-lethal weapon. Those can be used in certain situations, honestly a lot of situations, though I couldn't comfortably say you can complete the entire game without killing whatsoever. The settled systems is mostly civilized, but it can be a dangerous place if you're going off the beaten path, and you're absolutely going off the beaten path. Again, Will says the speech challenge game is added in specific scripted moments, and we try to add one into most quests where important characters confront you. So I'm assuming what Will means is, you can stealth around stuff. You can sneak around people people. You can talk your way through people with their speech thing that we've seen in some dialogue before. Emil says there's non-lethal options, which I had to Google this and remind myself there are some very specific ways you could knock out people, like using a syringer rifle in Fallout 4, just not killing them, but sort of pacifying them. So that's what I assume they're referring to there. But when they say they can't confirm whether you can do everything as a pacifist, that just reminds me of how crazy this game is going to be. There's just so many different things going on. They didn't specifically plan for that to be possible, it sounds like. Question 9. What are the beliefs and basic history of the religions we can join? So these are the Sanctum Universum, Enlightened, and Great Serpent. Emil says existing in real life religions are part of the Starfield universe, with folks of all religions and denominations out there, but we don't really focus on them. Instead, we highlight 3 new ones specific to the game. Will says the Sanctum Universum is only a couple decades old in our timeline, but has gained a lot of prominence. They believe that God is out there somewhere in the universe, and that humanity's ability to travel the stars brings us closer to God. Emil says Sanctum Universum, the members called Universals, believe that God very much exists somewhere in the universe, that a higher power is guiding us all. Specifically, they believe that humanity's ability to travel the universe and grab jump is God's way of saying, I'm out here, come find me. Will says the Enlightened are an atheist group that focuses on humanitarian and community work. They believe that life is something every person has to take responsibility for, so that if we want the world to be a better place, we have to do it. Emil says the Enlightened, these folks are essentially organized atheists. They don't believe in any kind of higher power. Rather, they teach that human beings have to take care of each other, and they practice what they preach through various community outreach programs. House Varun, oh boy. So in the game, you're not really sure what the complete truth is, but the gossip among the guards is this: a colony ship sets off for a new world, making grab jumps along the way. After one of those grab jumps, one of the passengers claims he spent that time communing with a celestial entity known as the Great Serpent. What was a few seconds for everyone else was much longer for him, and he brought back a mandate, which is basically get on board or be devoured when the Great Serpent encircles the universe. Is it true? I ain't saying. So in the game, you sometimes face off against House Varun zealots as an enemy group, and that's their motivation. Really not much else to add here. A lot of juicy information for people who want to dig into these factions. I think it's really cool, and it shows that, yeah, they're very much into their own universe and building out the lore. However, House of Varun sounds amazing. I definitely have to do a playthrough of Starfield, aligning with them. That sounds like the ultimate chaos faction. Question 10, how many companions total will we be able to recruit? Will says there are over 20 named characters who can join your crew. Emil says over 20 total, and we really focused on the members of Constellation. Will says 4 of them are from Constellation and have the most story and interaction with the player, but all of the named characters have their own backgrounds and can follow you around and carry your stuff. Emil says when we first began Starfield pre-production, we looked back at our previous games and we realized how popular and effective the companions were. So they were a big priority for us, and we really wanted to tie them directly to the main quest. There are some really big moments with them specifically. I should also mention that our companion voice cast is amazing. We haven't released the list yet, but you can be sure that there are a lot of talented actors bringing those characters to life. Same for Constellation in general. This is really great stuff to hear. That's a big roster. 20 is awesome. It definitely feels like a step up. And this is an unpopular opinion, but I think Fallout 4 had the best interaction with companions. It really felt like those were living, breathing people with their own motivations. So yeah, I'm excited to dig in and sort of see who these people are, learn more about them, and see what all 20 plus named characters are that we can have with us. That's a huge number. I wonder how many people can join you at the same time, not just follow you around and carry your stuff. I feel like that's only going to be one person, at least on foot. But my follow-up would be, can we fit 20 people on our ships? Can we build a ship big enough to support that many people? I don't know. Question 11. When we assign crew members to work at Outposts, do we have to pay them salaries? Emil says you pay them just once. We actually experimented with paying them regular salaries, but ultimately decided to just have the one upfront cost. Will says, yep, one-time payment that you can use the speech challenge game to negotiate over. Some traits also affect the cost. Emil says there's a lot to do in Starfield, and we wanted to minimize what the player had to constantly keep track of. This is a reasonable explanation for me. I know some people are going to dig into this and say, no, we wanted the, salaries. So we want to, keep track of this stuff. And my answer to that is mods, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure someone is going to mod that back into the game at some point. But yeah, we know we can assign crew to outposts and have them do something for us, very similar to Fallout 4 with our settlements and having them perform certain jobs. Question 12, will our companions be able to level up their perks? Will their perks stack with ours? Will says all crews start with a set of skills at specific ranks. Emil says they don't level up, but they come at different ranks depending on the companion. Will says you might meet a character that's especially good at rifles, and you hire them to watch your back. Or you might meet an astrodynamics expert that will increase your grav jump range when assigned to your ship. Emil says skills do stack with yours when relevant. Some are there for flavor to highlight the companion's backgrounds and interests, but you'll really feel the benefit of the ship and combat related ones. Getting a boost to your shields, or seeing your companion laying down fire with a weapon they're proficient in are pretty sweet moments. So it's good to hear this. I suppose you could read this and be like, why can't our companions level up as well with us? A lot of RPGs do that, have people join your party and then they level up with you. It sounds like it's just not that kind of game for Bethesda, and that's honestly fine with me. Something they don't mention, which I kind of assume is in the game, is a loyalty system. At least in Fallout 4, there were a set of things that your characters liked or disliked, and the more you did them, the more they would either like you more or like you less. And if you maxed out their affinity, they would give you a secret special perk. And they don't mention that here, but maybe that's a thing in Starfield, so because they've done it before. I don't know. Question 13 is, what are your favorite parts of the game? Will says, I love finding content that I haven't seen yet or forgot about. Our games are so big that no one person is likely to have seen it all, even after all of our passes and levels of review. Emil says, because of my position, my experience is a little different than yours. I won't speak for Will, but personally, I've seen every questline, every city, every major piece of content in the game at every stage of development, so my answer is colored by that. For me, the real pleasure is seeing how they've all evolved into the versions they are today, the versions everyone here will play. I have a real soft spot for Neon. Getting that city nailed down took a lot of work by a lot of different people, and the result is really the cyberpunk settlement I always hoped it would be. I also love all the quest lines. I think they're the best we've ever done. The designers on this project totally killed it. Will says our quests really evolve over development, and it's great to see how everyone adds to them, the designers, animators, voice actors, lighting, and everything. Not much to add here other than it sounds like a Bethesda game. It's massive. There's a ton of stuff in it. The fact that, no one person has probably seen everything except for Emil, according to him, is pretty wild, but expected from me. I like his bit about Neon, though. That was a city that's always caught my eye in the glimpses of gameplay that we've seen, so I'm just really excited to specifically explore that one. Also, him saying these are the best quest lines they've ever done. I know people tend to say that about the things that they're currently working on because they're working on it at the moment. They're really excited about it, but that means something in my book, the fact that he's confident enough to say that, so I'm excited. Question 14, what books or movies had a big influence on some of the quests? Will says, I'm a history nerd, so I actually listen to a lot of podcasts like Hardcore History and the History of Rome. Emil says, well, I'm a child of the late 70s, early 80s, and I have very fond memories of the sci-fi of that time. Back to Will, while our game is science fiction, I like how historians can tell you about how human beings react to extreme circumstances like war, famine, and technological breakthroughs, and you can imagine how we'd react to similar circumstances in a fictional setting, just at a grander scale. Emil says Star Wars, OG Battlestar Galactica, Space 1999, Buck Rogers, Battle Beyond the Stars, Ice Pirates, and let's not forget the classic that is Metal Storm, The Destruction of Jared's Sin. I think I actually saw that one in 3D. But also much headier sci-fi stuff, like the writings of Arthur C. Clarke and Robert Heinlein, or films like Contact, Interstellar, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and even Event Horizon. In all of those examples, you realize that outer space is two things. One, a source of mystery and wonder, and sometimes terror, and two, a giant blank page on which you can write any story. And we have written a lot of very different stories in Starfield. Awesome. These are really good answers to me. I love Will's part about, understanding how humanity actually behaves. I think that's such an important part of writing and why some games have better writing than others. I also love his mention of horror because I think that's something that is so true about space. It's genuinely terrifying. So I hope they sort of lean into that. We've already seen some gameplay of some pretty scary looking stuff. So I'm very into this. Question 15, what are some favorite small details in Starfield to add to the immersion? Emil says, I think what I really love is that although humans are living in space and our aesthetic is very much NASA punk, this is a very lived in universe and you can see it everywhere. Will says, I look really closely at all of our outfits. You can see seams, materials, especially on the spacesuits. Constellation members have patches on their spacesuits and they're tied to what skills they have. Back to Emil, you know, everyone loves the sandwiches, but it's the books that are lying around, the notes on bulletin boards, the environmental storytelling that our level designers and world artists are so good at. Back to Will, we also love buttons. There's a lot of buttons. And then Emil comes back, reiterates pretty much the same thing. He says he totally loves the work from our voice actors, the music, the sound effects, the clothes, and the buttons. I think this circles back to an underrated part or under talked about part in Bethesda games, which is the environmental storytelling, just what you're walking through and what you're taking in visually. And also the speed at which you're taking it in. Now, I know a lot of people, this is controversial, there's no vehicles in Starfield. I think they've confirmed that 100%. I don't really think that's an awful thing because it really allows you to slow down and soak in what's around you. That is something that they've always spent so much time on, and to add a vehicle, just letting you zoom past all of it, doesn't make a ton of sense in my book, but we'll see. Also in the direct, they showed us the constellation patches and how they relate to some of the companions that they were showing off, so that's pretty cool to hear too. And the last question, 16, what is the history of the mechs? Emil answers this one. He says, we showed this a bit in one of the animated shorts. The mechs are leftovers from the Colony War. Note, it's Colony War, not Colony Wars, singular. Both sides, United Colonies and Freestar Collective, had mechs, but the Freestar Collective really mastered them. The United Colonies had mechs too, but they also relied on the controlled alien beasts from their Xeno Warfare division. Both of those were outlawed with the armistice that ended the Colony War. I'm not saying that there's an old mech battleground in the game, I'm typing it. Mechs, not usable, no, they're in ruins. So there you go, further confirmation and proof there's not going to be vehicles in this game, including mechs. This really goes back to the timeline that Bethesda released, I think a day or so ago, where they went through the last, I want to say, like 200 to 300 years of history before Starfield even starts. One of those important dates is the Colony War, which started in 2307 and ended in 2311. So a 4-year war, and then the story in Starfield starts in 2330. So this is something like 20, 30 years ago. It's really relatively recent. That's probably going to be at the forefront of everyone's minds in how these factions are treating each other. If we look at the timeline for the Colony War, it says that it started because Freestar Collective began farming on the planet of Vesta, which was against a previous treaty that they had done before. So the UC laid siege to Vesta. So that essentially tells us that's where this mech battleground is going to be. And I cannot wait to go to that planet and check it out. So there you have it, all 16 questions with the answers and a little bit of analysis. This really feels like something for the people like you and me. If you're watching this video, you're probably just chomping at the bits to get any little bit of information. Again, it doesn't feel like any of this is groundbreaking, but it just sort of colors in the gaps of things that I was wondering about. And it just gets me, you know, that much more hyped for 2 weeks from now, guys. I mean, we are almost there. For those of you still listening all the way to the end of the video, let me know in the comment section below what kind of content you want to see from me. My initial idea is to just sort of play and do not like a daily log, but every couple of days just kind of loop you guys in on a task, just something I'm doing in Starfield. So this is not a front to back let's play playthrough. I think that's a little exhausting, but to sort of set a goal and then achieve that goal in a video or over a couple days, and I'll record it and put it into one video. That's my idea right now. So let me know what you think about that or any other ideas in the comment section below. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe for more Starfield videos, tons coming out when it comes out, you know, in a couple of weeks. Also ring that bell so you don't miss anything from me. Thank you guys once again, and I will talk to you on the next one.